there, and welcome to another episode of HomeTech.fm. So happy to be with you. Jason Griffin here, joined by Seth. Seth, how's it going?
Good, man. Good, man. We're officially listener supported.
This is like NPR here.
Yeah. We're going to talk about recipes and stuff this episode.
We are a listener-funded podcast, sort of, at least partially, anyways. We do want to thank those who have stepped forward and contributed. For anyone who might not know, we launched a page on Patreon, which is a site that's sort of like Kickstarter. Allows you to basically contribute to the podcast and kind of help support us and help us in our mission to kind of not only sustain, but of course grow and improve the show. And we'll include a link to that in our show notes again this week. If you want to get involved, we would certainly appreciate it. But we had a few people step forward this week and become patrons of the show, and we really, really appreciate it. Sincerely, it means a lot. And true to our word, we want to thank we had a few people contribute, and we've got their names up on our like what we're internally calling our hero wall, right? These are the people that are contributing, and those are up at HomeTech.fm/support. But true to our word, if you contribute, a certain amount a month, we're going to give you a shout out on air, and we have our first patron who warrants that this week in Jonathan Horvath, who we actually recently had on for an interview and really enjoyed the conversation with him. And he has very generously become a patron for $5 a month to the Home Tech Podcast, and we really appreciate it. So thank you so much, Jonathan.
Yeah, we definitely want to thank everybody who contributed. And if you can't contribute, please just head over to iTunes and just click off a few ratings there. That's how people actually find the show. I mean, iTunes is the the one and only podcast repository. Even if you don't use Apple products, iTunes is where everything gets rated at. Believe it or not, even most of the Android apps use the iTunes Live podcast directory, and that's how people find the show. If you just want to hop over to iTunes and throw a few stars onto the rating, preferably 5 stars. That we've got a 5-star rating right now.
That's what we'd prefer.
Yeah, of course. So either way, that's all we're asking. If you want to check out Patreon or iTunes, those links will be right there in the show notes. And let's go ahead and chat a little bit about the news this week.
Yeah, definitely one story right off the top that was huge news, and you and I think got to settle a score here, right? Like
it's going down
because we're having an internal debate about this, and I tweeted about it earlier today, and the Amazon Dash replenishment services. So Amazon Dash replenishment services, DRS is what they're calling it. And for anyone who might not be familiar, this is like basically a little button that you put in your house. It's a little piece of hardware, communicates over Wi-Fi, and you basically put this button like into your, the cabinet under your sink, right? Where you keep like the dishwasher detergent. And when you see that you're running short on the dishwasher detergent, you push the button, and automatically, like a day or two later, a replacement for your dishwasher detergent shows up at the front door. To me, that is awesome. Like, especially having a newborn daughter at home, right away I saw this and I thought, diapers. Like, that was the very first thing that came to my mind. You put this right next to the diapers, push the button when they're starting to get low, and like, you don't even have to worry about it. Now, I think Seth and I both agree that this is like useful, right? And maybe you can speak up here, Seth, if you disagree with that. But the debate we were having on this topic was like, does this constitute a smart home product?
Right. And no, I totally get this out of the way. I totally think this is a great product. This is what some people want, not necessarily everyone. I actually had some conversations about this particular product with different people. Some were parents, Jason, and they thought it was the most horrible idea that they'd ever heard of, because their kids would they love to push buttons. Yeah,
okay.
Their kids are going to go around and push these buttons all day long, and you're going to get 300 pounds of toilet paper delivered to your house the next day.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, but I think, all right. So what I'm upset about is that there were a couple of things out there, Mashable and DealerScope and ReadWrite.com. They all three of those guys, they posted some articles saying that this is Amazon's entrance into the smart home. And I'm fundamentally opposed to calling this a smart home device. I just want to have some standards. I want to draw a line in the sand. All right, this is a button that connects to the internet and orders one product off of one particular website, and only from your interaction, right? So you still have to push that button. Mm-hmm. You still have to make something happen. That's not a smart device. That's not home automation in any way, shape, or form that I would define home automation or smart home being. I think it's still a dumb device, but they're doing something very smart with it. And I what I think has happened here is actually some good marketing on Amazon's part. Like, they've marketed this as a smart home product, right? So you're seeing those stories being written, and even people that you and I know and respect, like, have started to call this, the entrance to the smart home. It's totally not. It's smart shopping is what it is, right? I mean, yeah. I guess, could we agree on that?
Yeah, to a certain extent, but I don't necessarily see this as I'll concede the point that I think a lot of these websites, like, when you get into technology journalism, it's really about finding something to write about. And this was a big story because it came from Amazon. And so you're seeing the headlines, Amazon enters the smart home with X, Y, or Z. And I think personally, I would agree with you that statement is overblown. However, I would disagree with you on the fact that I actually do see this as a smart home product. And I think, ignoring the fact that maybe we're debating semantics, I see, the smart home and home automation, or, I guess I should say, I see the smart home and home automation as two separate things. And I know those terms get thrown together all the time, and it's become very synonymous nowadays. And there's nothing, inherently wrong with that. But I see smart home technology as any use of technology that makes my life more, secure, comfortable, convenient. These are like basic tenets of like what I want out of my living space. And I see these buttons as being very convenient, very useful. They utilize technology, and therefore I look at them as like, it's a smart home product. It makes my home more intelligent. It utilizes technology to make my life more convenient. Therefore, it's a smart home product.
Okay. Well, I think you're seeing the end game. And I think what you're saying, this could lead to a smart home. I think that's what you're getting at. Amazon announced this product, but at the bottom of the page on their announcement, that replenishment services, there's a bigger deal behind that.
There is. You're right.
Yeah. So there's an API that Amazon is going to be issuing along with this, that an automated system. We could take a look at any one of the platforms that you and I use, Control4, Savant, Crestron, or even something like Smart Things or If This and That, could reach out to and touch that API, and from a trigger or an action inside your house, maybe you have a coffee machine or a K-cup dispenser that detects that you're running out of coffee. That device could actually reach out, and I think I saw this in an example on their website. That device could reach out and order the product automatically and just let you know when things were getting low. And right. I think that's the automation. That's what I'm looking for. That's what I would consider a smart device. And I think that this is kind of just stepping stones. But I'm not willing to call it a smart device yet.
Well, I am, but I'm glad you pointed that out, because I think that really that one tiny, like, if you look at that one tiny example, right? Like, you've got a Keurig coffee maker, okay? And, you basically have your little button on a magnet next to the fridge that's like, oh, I'm getting low on K-cups, and I'm just going to push the button, and some more of them will be at my door a day or two from now, versus what you're saying, which is like, it just knows that I'm getting low on K-cups, and they just show up without me having to do anything. And it's that one little action that you're talking about that defines kind of the whole difference between, currently what people are calling home automation versus like the true conscious home. And we've talked about this on numerous episodes, and it is a fascinating topic. And I think that there's really a lot of meat to that debate, but I am willing to call this product, and I'll stand firmly behind this. This is a smart home product. This makes my home more intelligent. It makes my home more convenient. It utilizes technology to just give me an ability to just, save a few steps, and boom, the second I see we're low on diapers, I push a button, and 2 days later they're at my door. And to me, that's smart. It's technology. I look at it as a smart home product.
All right.
We might have to.
We're gonna have to agree to disagree on this one. Yeah.
It's an interesting product. One way.
It is a very interesting product. And dude, I love this thing. I send it to my wife. I'm like, you have to get this. Like, that one. I mean, pressing a button when I'm groggy and 6 a.m. and I'm out of coffee,
Exactly.
Hitting that button is going to save a life. I mean, that I can't stress how important that is. But yeah, I mean, this is a really cool product. I think it's really cool that a company like Amazon exists that can open up an API like this, and you can hit that API with a device like this, your phone. But I'm just not willing to call a buy it now button on my coffee maker a smart home. Like, I'm not ready to make that leap, Jason. I can't.
Fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. Well, there's one other story that we wanted to jump into here before we get into our main segment. We had Cody Crossland come on for another listener conversation, and we really enjoyed chatting with him and got into a number of topics about sort of evolving technology, and as a purchaser, end user, like, how do you protect yourself, and where do you look for the value, and all those sort of things. So we look forward to presenting that. But before we jump into that, I'm a big Savant guy. Seth, I know you've looked at Savant. I know you haven't pulled the trigger yet. We don't need necessarily go there, but they did actually release a new controller. I think just like today or yesterday, as we sit here and record, is when I saw the news. And there's a couple interesting things about this controller. And the one to me that really warrants mentioning above everything else is the addition of Z-Wave. Did you see this?
I did. It looks really cool. I'm going to lean pretty heavily on you. I got the demo of Savant. I get the idea. From what I understand, they have a controller which they call a smart host, right? And
yeah,
they have different tiers of that. So you can get the Mac Mini smart host, or you can get this device, which is
so the way the verbiage works is like, you've got when they first came out, you had just your host. It was always a Mac Mini, but that was years ago. And then just recently they evolved to where like the smart host was a little Linux box. So prior to that, the system was basically 100% reliant on a Mac Mini running OS 10. And they had their like special version of software or whatever that ran on that Mac Mini. Just last year, they introduced the Smart Host, which was like their own little proprietary Linux box that essentially did kind of the same thing as far as an end user is concerned. It just didn't scale up. So if you had a very large house or a very complicated home automation project, you would have to go up to the Pro host, which was the Mac Mini. The difference here is that they had that smart host and they had priced it a certain way to make it kind of enticing. But what a lot of people may or may not have realized was that host was just a processor. It did not have any IOs on it. And for anybody listening who doesn't know, like, an IO could be anything, right? It didn't have any IR ports. It didn't have any RS-232 ports. It didn't have any relays, GPIOs, none of that. It was just basically a little processor. That's the difference with this new one that they've released. This is their first smart host that they've released. It retails for like $999, so basically $1,000, and it's their first host that has integrated IOs right on the same piece of hardware. So that's a pretty big deal. I mean,
yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's a huge deal, because to buy that I'm sure you could buy the little small controller, but you'd still have to buy. I think I have one sitting over here. They have like different models with 8 and 12.
There's
outputs.
A bunch of different models. Yeah.
So that's huge. I mean, because if I think about it like a Control 4, if I was to put this up against a Control 4, the nearest one would be the HC800, and that is a $1,500 device, if I'm remembering correctly. So
yeah,
not that the specs are equal, but as far as general purpose IO and IR and RS-232, that would be kind of on par with that particular controller. So I think that's pretty good. They also came out with a keypad.
They did. And, I got to be honest, like, I'm not as familiar with their lighting line because, full disclosure, like, we don't sell it. They acquired a company called Light Touch, which is based out of Utah, I think back in like 2012 or 2013. I don't remember exactly, but it was a couple years ago. They made an acquisition of Light Touch, and that was basically their, like, foray into being lighting manufacturer, distributor, or whatever you want to call it. We don't use those products, so I'm not, like, I can't speak personally from a position of experience on their keypads or anything like that. But I did see the news release. They've got these new keypads that look like maybe they're configurable a little bit, and
they've got a dial.
They've got a dial, and that, I got to be honest, I was like, that was the only thing that I could see when I looked at the release, was like, it looks like it came from 10 years ago, because it looks like something you would see from like Russound or something for like an old, like a volume control based audio distribution system. So I wasn't as big a fan, and I've never been a huge fan of their keypads, but I think Savant as a AV and home automation company has really been heading in the right direction. We do sell quite a bit of Savant. Most of our clients who purchase it really like it. I think this new host is definitely an interesting offering. Again, I think the fact that they're offering Z-Wave on it is really intriguing to me. And as an integrator, I'm like paying very close attention to that, right? Because Z-Wave is really, at its core, it's a DIY technology, right? I mean, that's kind of the whole like battle cry of Z-Wave, is like interoperability and being able to just go out and buy any Z-Wave switch or any Z-Wave dimmer, and it'll work with anything else. And I think the fact that Savant has included Z-Wave on this host speaks to, like, they've got their eyes down market, and potentially at a DIY offering. I wouldn't be surprised within the next year or two to see it. It's going to be a push for them. It's going to alienate a lot of dealers, but I just don't know how a company stays in business without doing it. Because even if you look at this host, right, it goes for basically $1,000, and we're sitting here talking about what a good deal that is. But when you put that up against something like, the Neo remote, which we had on recently, I think backers on Kickstarter were getting that for what, like $250?
Yeah. Like, we'll think about a Vera, right? I think those are about $300 at the most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you would have to tack on like a global cache piece or something. So you're looking at a little bit more, but yeah. Still
but you
well
get
under
my point.
$1,000.
It's
right?
like at $1,000 to us as integrators, it looks like a screaming deal, but to end users, the expectation is becoming just cheaper and cheaper. And I think that, I don't know, to me, the fact that they included Z-Wave is very interesting, and I think it speaks to an interest in a potential DIY offering at some point.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I've heard rumors from other various people in the industry that Savant was definitely looking this way, and they have the interface for it. It looks like. I don't know if they have the back end setup. That's still quite a complicated thing.
Definitely. Yeah.
But then again, you look at a product like Vera, and it's maybe on par with that too. I mean, there are some pretty tech savvy DIY guys out there that could put together a system and run circles around some integrators that I know. So.
Very true.
Yeah.
Very true. Well, it's all interesting stuff, and certainly we'll be keeping an eye on it. I'm a big fan of Savant, and we use a lot of their hardware, and so I'm always tuned into this stuff. But without dwelling too much longer, we want to get into our main feature here. Again, we had Cody Crossland on, who's one of our loyal fans. He's been in, Seth and Cody are buddies from a while back, and Cody's been listening to the show basically from when we started, right? And we really appreciate him. Got a lot of interaction out of him, and I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, it was good talk. Good talk.
So without further ado, we will present to you our conversation with Cody Crossland. Hey, Cody, welcome to Home Tech.
Thanks for having me on, Jason.
Good to have you on, Cody. I know that you and Seth have a lot of history, and we're definitely pleased to welcome you to the show. This is kind of a relatively new segment that we're doing, sort of bringing listeners on to just kind of get an idea for your history and your involvement in the smart home, and we're pleased to have you. So we got a couple of topics lined up here tonight that we're going to talk about, but before we jump into that, maybe just give us a personal introduction, and I know you and Seth have some history, so maybe you can kind of let us know a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, I'm a Control4 dealer from the Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area, and I've been messing with Control4 systems, designing, installing, selling, and supporting them for the last 7 years in some form or fashion. Started around the 1.3.2, kind of the end of that software version era, and have seen Control4, change and improve and make different things happen over the years, and been with the ups and downs of it. And it all started kind of in the background of my IT experience prior to that. And the owner of the company actually came to me that I was working at the time in 2007 and challenged me with solving his problem of having too many remotes at the house. And so in the process of looking into that and trying to figure out how to make, just one remote control everything, that's what got us turned on to the Control4 product. And then ultimately, started installing, working with a local installer, and then, just going from there. And it's turned, a hobby into being able to do something that I enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's probably how you and I met. It sounds like you've been doing Control4 just as long as I have. I started about that 1.3.2 era as well.
Yeah, and I think you and I actually have exchanged some conversations about different ideas that we've had or problems that we're having and solutions to those problems on the forums, and hanging out there, and then meeting up at the industry trade show CEDIA annually and getting together and just chatting about work and things that we enjoy in real life.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a big part of CEDIA and a big part of the forums. And what we're talking about, the Control4 dealer forums, but there's also forums. There's a Control4 public facing forum where just pretty much anybody can come in and spam
or ask questions. But yeah, spam. We get a lot of spam.
A lot of spam on that forum, yeah, especially about NFL jerseys. I don't really understand the connection and the market, but you can buy NFL jerseys for cheap, evidently.
Perfect.
Yeah, so we were talking a little bit in the pre-show about an idea that you had about buying an existing smart home. Kind of touch on that a little bit. The idea that you had when people come in, and I guess you've been working on a house this week that is a new house for someone that they purchased, and there was a big long inspection process to it.
That's true. It was actually a new to them house a few years ago. The house was originally constructed sometime in the early 20th century. I want to say somewhere in the 20s, 30s, 40s, something like that. Older neighborhood, and they had owned it and were renting it out. and they decided that they were going to move into it. And they took the opportunity after the previous renters left to gut the house and all the way down to the studs, and new HVAC, new electrical, new plumbing, everything. And while we were there doing the install, we noticed that there was a lot of chatter amongst the different trades about this infamous punch list that was left behind by the inspector that came out from Dallas to take a look at it. And, depending on who you asked, it was a little bit like seeing Bigfoot, because some people said it was 50 pages long and other people said it was 100 pages long. And, it was a mythical creature of different proportions, and we did see the report. It didn't have anything to do with the things that we were doing, but it was kind of interesting to see the things that they had picked out, because I've seen one end of the spectrum, home inspectors do just kind of an okay job. And then you see it on the other end of the spectrum where inspectors really nitpick everything. But I thought it was interesting that he didn't really look at any of the smart home aspects of what we were doing for our particular client. And, I got to thinking about it, if you're buying an existing home, let's say somebody else has put a smart home system in, whether it's, a dealer-oriented system like Control4 or Savant or Crestron, or they've gone the do-it-yourself route with maybe, a Wink hub or some of these other things, even the old school stuff like CQC and Cinemar that have been the DIY thing for several years now. When you're buying a home, you don't really know what you're getting into when you get into somebody else's project like that. So how do you know that, it truly does have whole home audio, and does it really control everything from the one remote, or do the automated shades even function, or what kind of lighting system is involved with that, So, it's kind of an interesting period in the market where, you're seeing a lot of the smart home technology really take off for the masses. And then, people are going to be buying more homes. The market is picking up. And I think that'll be a thing that more people will come across is, the smart homes and connected this and, app that. And, how do you know that you're truly getting what they say that you're getting? And, what about a service that would have somebody that comes in, like a home inspector and says, and is able to run through all the technology and say, yeah, this is exactly what you're getting, or maybe the system isn't as advertised, and or maybe it is, and maybe it could use a couple of tweaks and upgrades to bring it up to current spec. But I think it's a good service to have, and especially when you're spending, several thousand, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a home, maybe. Sure. Protect your investment as a good consumer.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an issue that as an integrator, I've come across numerous times, and it's always one of those like scary things, right? Because you never ever want to turn down work. That's just like not something that anyone in any line of business ever wants to do. And, we've had a number of occasions where we've had like a referral or an existing client who buys a new home come to us and say, I've got this new house and, I need you guys to come like take a look at it. And it's a little like scary from a business perspective to want to go in and take on that liability, because you
never know what you walk into.
Yeah. You have no idea what you're getting into. And so I think that might be kind of like a challenge to sort of craft that business model and figure out, how to make it so that the homeowners are deriving enough value in order to feel like, they're getting their money's worth and also making it worth your time. I think typically what happens right now, right? And I'd be curious to hear your opinion on this from having been in these situations as well. Typically, what happens right now is that you bring in a new integrator and he looks at it and he either prices it like a time and materials kind of thing. And that's not always comfortable for the end, consumer, or, he goes in, gives a flat rate and usually ends up like losing his shirt on it. So like, how have you kind of dealt with that in the past?
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective. Both of your points are right. I've done both, and sometimes you get in with somebody who really values what it is that you do, and the time and materials thing works because it's fair for both parties. And but it can be a slippery slope. You can think that it'll only take 5 hours or 10 hours to go in and completely understand somebody else's work. But then it may turn into, you might be there a whole week, if nothing's labeled or there's no documentation or anything like that. It can be a pretty daunting task. And then on the flip side, if you just say, I'll come and take a look at this for $500, and that might be a few hours of your work for either you or a couple of technicians. And you go there and you just, like you said, you flatbed it and you end up losing your shirt on the job. So it is kind of a thing that you have to balance, and maybe it's a thing where it is a flat rate service from the home inspection, the pre-buy process or the post-buy process, where you just say, I'll come in and take a look at it for $500. Here are the points that we'll cover, because I think it would be really difficult for any one person doing it to be completely versed in every automation system and be able to completely give a whole picture in a fixed period of time without knowing everything about that install. And so I think maybe you could hit on the important parts about, does it even work? Is there anything critical that's broken, and just kind of make sure, you know what you're getting into as a home buyer. I think that might be kind of the important thing. I think that's really what, the home inspection process is about. Are there any major problems? Is there a hole in the roof? Is my foundation level? Does the HVAC work? Is
Are
there
my
any
plumbing pipes good?
Yeah, Seth knows firsthand about some of these things.
We definitely need a smart home inspector. But I mean, what's crazy about all this stuff, like all that stuff you just listed there, like even my plumbing pipes, like from a dollar perspective, an AV system would definitely be more money. Like just a hole in the roof. I mean, that could cause some damage, and it could, but just to get that repaired, like that's some pretty basic stuff. You're pretty much paying for parts and labor for a contractor to come in and do, but you're only going to look at a few $1,000s to have that, remedied, right? But if we're talking about an AV system that, I walk into these all the time, whether 10-year-old AV systems or kind of like one of those I wouldn't say a DIY special, but one of those, I mean, heck, even integrator specials here in town,
the white van special.
Yeah,
Trunk
white
slammer.
van special. Yeah. Like it where you're just kind of walking into something that doesn't quite look right. I've got 3 or 4 jobs that I'm just like in the last week that I'm thinking of. One of them the guys are on right now, and we're having to pull wires for, because there weren't wires run between 2 additions. And then there's homes that I walk into and I inspect it, and the equipment's like, there's not even a Cat 5 run between the TV and the audio equipment for me to put a balun in to get the thing up to HDMI. So we're talking about a lot of retrofit labor.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's just like, how do you... But at the end of the day, this stuff costs so much more. I mean, we're talking, $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 in AV equipment alone, and labor. I mean, at the end of the day, when if we're talking serious budget numbers, that's what it could get up to. And I think, knowing that going into a home, when you're looking at buying a home or purchasing a home or whatever, and you see all this AV equipment sitting over the corner, most people wouldn't even know what that is, and like Jason said, it could be $150,000 of Crestron gear. It could work, it could not. It could be 10 years old and just not be worth even keeping. But what are you looking at to fix that or replace it? You're looking at, in most cases, you're going to look at more than what it would do to replace all the plumbing in your house, turns out, or do even full tile throughout the house, that kind of stuff. Our products aren't cheap.
and maybe that's where the service would therein lie is you would be able to say, okay, you have all this stuff, and does it add any value to the home? Is it going to be worth messing with? Or like you said, is it just something that's been sitting in the closet and it's been untouched for the last 2 years? And, there was a lightning strike and nobody really wanted to get around to fixing it. It wasn't a big deal. And now it's not worth anything. So then it doesn't even become a thing that they should even consider and focus their energies on trying to do anything with.
Right.
Yeah. I think Cody, you hit the nail on the head, because like, I think the analogy is somewhat valid, but it's not a direct analogy. When you start talking about like buying a new home and having an inspection about like plumbing or electrical, I mean, those are like, plumbing is obviously like critical function of the house. If your plumbing doesn't work right, it's like the house can become, it's basically unlivable. Electrical is like a life and safety concern. AV, home automation, if we're honest with ourselves, it's a luxury. And so really, I kind of want to bring this.
I don't know. Without HBO, I'm not going to be able to watch. The next.
I would say I could sarcastically disagree, because I've had some people who you would think that home automation is a life safety thing, and
that's
depending on who it is and what time it is.
Every integrator listening right now knows exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, depending on who it is and what time it is, you might say it's nice outside. Go play.
Yeah, exactly. But to my point, basically what I'm getting at is, and I kind of want to bring this around full circle, because I know we have a fair amount of people who listen to the show who are not integrators, who are either enthusiasts or, homeowners who are buying a new home and are looking at technology and trying to learn more. Sure. As somebody who's in that position, not an integrator, but somebody who's looking to buy a new home, and maybe the sale is presented to them of this existing house, and they're looking at all of this technology that's being left with the house and being, sold to them as a feature or a benefit. Mm-hmm. That's where I think you get into the need for what you're talking about. And I'd be curious, Cody, to hear like what advice you would give somebody in that situation who might be looking to buy a home that has existing technology in it.
Yeah, I would say to, contact a few local dealers, if you can find out what the automation system is, with Control4, Crestron, Savant, or what have you, contact a few dealers and see if they'd be interested in coming out and taking a look at it, and spending a little time with it and just kind of giving you a rundown of what the situation is. And I would say get definitely multiple opinions, because as we discussed earlier, it could vary. Your results could vary depending on who you call, and you should be able to kind of find the middle of the true situation of what it is, and have them come out, take a look at it, and get the opinion, and you'll know for sure after having somebody come out and take a look at it whether it's worth anything or not. If you get 3 different guys come out and they all tell you the same thing, like, oh man, I wouldn't touch this with a 10-foot pole and it's going to cost $20,000 to fix it, you'll know. Yeah. But if they come out and they say, it's not a bad system, it's been well taken care of, it's in pretty good shape, it's a little bit buying a classic car in a way. You have that classic car expert that comes out and takes a look at it, and you know what, it's rust free, low miles, one owner, it's good to go. Or it's been parked outside under a tree, it's going to need a lot of work,
Yeah, I've got a funny story. I had a client call me up the other day, and they bought a penthouse, and I think it's in the Ritz downtown, and their real estate agent basically told them to not do anything with the system because it was like a Crestron system, like a really old Crestron system. They told him, don't change anything, don't call Comcast, don't do anything.
It works, leave it alone.
Yeah, it works, just leave it alone. Which is, you hear that all the time. The funny part was the previous owner was still paying the cable bill because they couldn't transfer the name.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it was just like this huge mess, and it's like, oh Lord, just call Comcast and we'll figure out how to reprogram the system. What a mess. But yeah, it's that this kind of stuff, like I just wonder what's going through people's heads. I mean, I'm sure the real estate agent has one motivation, that's to close the sale, right? Like they're not really interested in introducing any friction into that sales process. But
right.
I I think it's probably good. To me, I look at the bones of the house, right? Like I would look and make sure that you had structured wiring, in an age appropriate house. Cat 5, Cat 6, RG6 throughout, and have maybe a couple of zones audio. That's a little less important to me these days because of some of the wireless systems like Sonos. But I definitely think at minimum have some infrastructure wiring for a good solid wired network, not a wireless network, but maybe a structured wiring. If you've got that, I think you're probably halfway there. Maybe a good security system put in, to have contact sensors and that kind of thing. That always can help out.
Sure.
But the electronics are just tough. I run across systems here all the time that are aging, to say the least. The one I ran into the other day was a full analog system. It was composite video, analog audio, still working, still humming, buzzing along. It's just they want to put a new TV in, and that's going to basically have to upgrade the entire system from that.
I'm sure that new 4K TV will scale that composite feed just beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. And that is like such a great point. And this is one of those things like that was a huge pain point when we had clients who were buying homes who had, 5-wire pulled through the wall for RGB component video. We all miss the days of component video, right? If we're honest with ourselves, because it just worked. It was bulletproof. If you did your terminations right and you plugged it in and it worked the first time, it was always going to work. Now we're in an age of digital video, HDMI, and this is definitely something that like ties into this whole conversation. Is this idea of 4K, which is really like we're kind of at a tipping point, I think, in terms of adoption, and pretty much all of the new TVs that are going into at least my clients' homes right now are 4K capable, and really right now it's about the content. But this gets into a really critical area when you talk about buying a new home. If you've got existing HDMI distribution, you might think that okay, I've got HDMI. I've got a whole rack full of HDMI distribution. Like this is a really valuable, it's adding value to my home. But you could be wrong, because we're right now on the precipice of 4K, and this gets real technical, but we've got HDMI, we've got HDCP, copy protection. This gets very complicated. So Cody, have you been dealing with this? Because I know like with 4K, we're getting into the next generation of HDCP, and that is a whole nother can of worms that people should be considering if they're buying existing technology.
It is. Systems are being installed across the country every day, new TVs, new receivers and things like that. And the electronics companies are really good at advertising 4K. And the first ones out of the gate were the TVs. And they've been out for, a year and a half now, it seems.
Yep.
Because I know that I did a Sony 4K projector last year, and the things were just coming to market and everybody was really excited about the new technology. But then it didn't really come until later, like around CEDIA time last year when we were looking at it this September, that come to find out there still wasn't really a lot of content. And, we got started to looking into, what exactly the reason for the lack of 4K content was. And then it was because, if you really read into it, Hollywood that creates all the content, the movie studios, TV studios and things like that, they want to create the high def content, but they want to make sure that content that they create, that they work so hard for and spend all that money on and employ all those people for, stays copy protected. That's the HDCP part. And so they thought that with the advent of 4K and all this glorious high definition picture, with the new formats, they wanted a new copy protection scheme. Because, if you do a little searching on the internet, I'm sure you could find that, there are ways around the copy protection to do the different things that you want to do for whatever reason, whether, good or bad or indifferent on the side of the argument. And so they wanted a new copy protection scheme. Well, that new copy protection scheme that they have for HDCP 2.2 is not something that can be applied via a firmware update. It's a whole new HDMI chipset that has to go into the television. And, the folks that early adopted these 4K TVs, they might have had HDMI 2, but maybe not HDCP 2.2. And the way that copy protection works is that if any one device, whether it's the source or the receiver or the matrix or the television, any one device doesn't have the HDCP 2.2 link, then you won't get a picture on that content that calls for that HDCP copy protection for 4K. So you've got that shiny new 4K Blu-ray player and a 4K movie that you've been waiting so long to see, and you hook that into your 2014 vintage 4K TV, and if you weren't savvy enough to know about it, you might think, oh, this will work great. I've been waiting so long to see this content on my TV, and then you get greeted with no picture or a message that just says content cannot be displayed or something like that. And so as an integrator, when I'm having conversations with clients and, talking about, what do you like to watch? Are you big into movies? Do you watch a lot of pay cable TV services or satellite TV services and things like that? The nature of the conversation will lend itself to do you want to watch it just in one room, like in a media room or a theater, or do you want to watch those sources throughout the home, which leads into media distribution? And up until recently, I think Leaf was one of the first HDMI matrix companies, besides Crestron's DM, to come out with a HDCP 2.2 compliant matrix switch, so that if you bought that and you hooked a source into it, then you could get it as long as your whole chain of HDMI was 2.2 HDCP compatible, you could get a signal. But there are, installs happening today that, work perfectly fine with the existing sources, Blu-ray players, Apple TVs, and what have you, hooked into them and hooked into the 1080p or 4K displays today, and that works great. But, that investment that they're making today of, $8,000, $10,000 or whatever for, TVs and a matrix switch and the sources and everything, when those new sources with 4K material come out and they call for that HDCP 2.2 copy protection, it's going to be a little bit disappointing. And, integrators are going to get a call and they say, hey, how come, I just spent all this money on this receiver or this TV or this matrix switch or whatever. And, that's a conversation that, I try to have with my clients and just, say, hey, this is the situation. We're kind of in a weird place. So, we can do HDMI now, and this is how it'll happen. We can do something else. Maybe they're not keen on distributing 3D or some of the other things that HDMI offers that some other method of distribution doesn't, and I know that some integrators will cringe to say it, but, there's still component switches, matrix switches being sold, and that component distribution system still works, and it still delivers 720p, 1080i, maybe 1080p component HD to your TVs, and it works great. And
it's super hard to find sources though that have component now.
That's true.
If you've got an existing system like we were talking about earlier, if you're buying a house that has existing technology and maybe you've got sources that have component, then that's true. By all means, I'm with you. It's bulletproof, but it's a lot. There's the analog sunset, and they're just getting rid of it.
It's a lot cheaper too to go component. When you're having a conversation about video distribution, depending on their needs and their budget, some users will just say, you know what, I'd rather spend the $8,000, $10,000 somewhere else and just do local sources. Maybe that's a DirecTV Genie mini client at the TV.
Yeah, we're finding a lot of clients are opting to go with kind of that route.
We see
days.
it too.
Yeah, and the TiVo Minis, have you been using those any?
Yes and no. I've used it with limited success. I think they had some issues with Mocha networking that they needed to kind of square away last year. So I don't see a whole lot of TiVos, and they definitely have a good interface. But here in my area, we're seeing a lot of DirecTV. So I don't know if that's just the pricing or, the fact that we have good southern exposure in most places. But
that's the same out here. DirecTV is like pretty dominant out here, at least for our clients.
Yeah, and outside of TiVo, I mean, at my house, if you go and you get like Time Warner for the longest time, if you compared the DirecTV interface to the Time Warner cable interface, I mean, you would never buy the Time Warner for interface because it was just so
garbage,
terrible. It looked like it was 1980s. So yeah, like you're saying, the local sources to the TV, like a Genie Mini or a TiVo Mini or something like that, maybe an Apple TV, they're all small boxes that you can hook directly into the TV with HDMI. That's a way that we've seen to get around the high cost of an HDMI matrix switch, and maybe that whole, centralized distribution system that used to be, really great thing and cheap and allow you to share sources because sources were what was expensive. Now I'm seeing that I'm putting in a lot of local sources, and the beauty of that is if you have a local source that you're upgrading, you can plug it into the TV and you don't have to worry about, all the other things that's connected into that have to be upgraded as well. You don't have to worry about a matrix switch and all the other jazz. You can just plug directly into the display. And, if your display supports it and you want that content there, you can just upgrade that one room.
Yeah. I'm definitely seeing that trending right now, especially in homes with about 4 to 5 TVs. Even some of the more expensive homes.
Yeah, it makes good financial sense.
Yeah. And it to me, I mean, it doesn't matter one way or another. The wiring is still the same. If they ever wanted to update and go full blown video distribution, I'm using the same Cat 5 that I get internet. We're using just add power or some HDBaseT T product to get that video HDMI signal from a centralized location to the TV. So yeah, I'm seeing that a lot more. That's why I brought up the TiVo Minis, or I guess those DirecTV and the Dish Network Hopper, I think is their version. The
Hopper, right? And their little Joeys. And that's interesting too, because they've announced earlier this year that they've got a 4K Joey, right, that works with the Hopper system. So I'm kind of curious, if they're offering any content through that. Like DirecTV supposedly has the 4K content that you can download on their Genie system. But again, it kind of adds a little bit of muddiness to the waters, because if you read from what I've seen, the fine print on that is DirecTV and Samsung reached an agreement with each other. And the only way that you can get that content during this agreement period is if you have the certain Samsung TVs that have the DirecTV client built into them.
Right.
And, you're seeing that with Samsung and some other content providers as well, where they're like, oh, we've got, the 4K sources, but it's only on Samsung TV. So, if you bought an LG TV and you wanted to hook it up to your 4K system or wanted to watch some 4K DirecTV, at the moment you have to wait it out until the content agreements expire and, more things become available. So it's kind of a tricky situation if you want your 4K content right now, and where are you going to get that, and what displays are you going to use, and what does the ecosystem look like that you're plugging it through? It's a lot simpler, like you said, if you've got a local source to a local TV, and you kind of can sit down and spend the time and energy to figure it out. But if you've got a more complicated or more robust system where you've got a lot of moving parts, maybe a matrix and 10 TVs, it becomes a little bit more complicated to make sure that you're 4K ready,
Yeah, I would say even more than a little bit. It becomes exponentially more complicated, and the problem with HDMI is that when we kind of dived into this part of the conversation, you were talking about HDCP 2.2 and how every device in your signal chain has to be compliant in order for it to work. The problem with HDMI is that even if every device in your signal chain is compliant, it still doesn't always work. It is a notoriously unreliable technology, and it's one that integrators are just pulling their hair out over all the time, because it's, we sell these systems to clients, they spend a lot of money on it, and when it doesn't work, they are rightfully frustrated and that frustration gets aimed, squarely at the guy who sold them the technology. And that's why it's just one of those things where, we're kind of running up against our time here, but just to bring it full circle, like when you're making technology buying decisions, whether you're buying an existing house that has technology in it, or you have your own home and you're thinking about upgrading to like a 4K TV, I mean, there's just always little pitfalls and booby traps that are very easy to fall into. And I think that really it kind of ties into the point that, having somebody come in like a professional systems integrator who's been there, done it, has that experience and can give you kind of an expert's opinion on what to look out for is, might cost you a little bit of money up front, but it's invaluable. And we can kind of close out, Cody, with you maybe giving your thoughts on that, and then we'll let you go. Sure.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that would be worth your time and energy as a potential buyer of the technology, to do your due diligence, whether that's reading it online or maybe calling in a couple of local experts, or even going online to the forums like we talked about earlier and just say, getting the opinion of others and just, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, double check me and make sure that, I'm not missing anything, because, there's always some asterisk or some fine print that, you need to read, like, only one HDMI port is HDTCP 2.2 compatible. So if you're planning on hooking up two things, pick the one you love the most, and you can't hook the other source up to it because there's only one port. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to, especially buying a home or spending a lot of money on a systems upgrade to 4K or whatever the newest technology might be, to have somebody do a double check and make sure that you're good to go and you're spending your money wisely.
Cool. Yeah. Well, totally good advice. I totally agree 100%. And I'd say, I think a red flag for me is if somebody offered to come out for free, and take a look at the system, that might be a red flag that they may not completely be serious. They may just want to sell you something. So I would offer to pay for whatever time that is, for anyone that came out to my house. I mean, it just, I had a situation where I had to have an inspection done, and I wanted to make sure I paid somebody who wasn't going to be doing the work, Right. So yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally think it's a good advice. So Cody, I just want to say thank you for coming on the show and chatting with us here. We could probably talk another 30 or 45 minutes.
Well, we'll save that for another episode.
Yeah. If somebody wanted to reach out to you and maybe buy an NFL jersey from you or something, where'd be a good place to do that?
Well, if you wanted to buy an NFL jersey from me, I'm not really a great source for it, but we can definitely talk about it on the forums. I'm on c4forums.com as screen name The Code Man. And if you wanted to chat with me on Twitter, I'm at Cody J. Crossland.
Excellent. Well, Cody, thanks for joining us on the show. We appreciate it. And we'll see you next time.
All right. See you guys in September.
All right. Take care, Cody.
All right. Bye-bye.